Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tarnished Bronze, where we are getting back into the swing of Justice League Detroit, which is with issue 239 by Big Jerry Conway, Big Chuck Patton. They're helped out by Rick Hoberg and the one and only mustachioed Mike Machlan. So, Patrick, up until now, we've had some ups and some downs with Justice League Detroit. Is this going to be an up? Because this might be Chuck Patton's last interior pencil. So, we need this one to be good, right?
Yeah, he goes out with a bang, I think, especially, as you said, interior pencils, we're losing him, which is a huge loss in my opinion, because I'm a huge fan of his work. I just can't say enough. I really think he makes has made the new Detroit JLA what it was like
And
the art it really hung on the art with all due respect to Conway. Some of the writing for me is hit or miss. The annual was great, some of the individual issues not so great including the one I just remembered. Full disclosure, we taped an issue where or an episode where I had to talk a lot, and I was like, gosh, I don't know that I've ever had to carry the weight so much. And then I remembered the Conway issue of JLA that I really went off on. So, but you never complain about Patton. He's great.
no,
This cover,
he was a revelation in those issues. It was
yeah.
it's
Who knew? Not necessarily the most famous name, but for me and what my eye is drawn to, just the perfect kind of art. Hoberg, also, as you know, a huge fan of his work on the annual number one. So, and to me, they're very sort of similar. They both have those clean lines and really great look.
so yeah,
This
Patton and
cover.
Hoberg are bringing in that 80s kind of like independent comics vibe. They both worked for like First Comics and Pacific Comics and Comico and all of these companies with the Mike Grells of this world and so on and so forth. So they're bringing a different sensibility than the usual DC artists. So let's see how it goes here, because this is the kind of culmination of
The cover, I was just going to say the cover is a perfect example.
yeah.
So much kinetic energy, right? The movement without any of the lines showing movement. We do have the words on on the screen, if not the blurbs, but the shadow looming,
Yeah.
Vixen ready to spring into action. Mother Wyndham is cowering, well, if not cowering, but I guess recoiling in fear. And the facial expressions are super on point. Yeah, it just looks great. It's really great.
It's good stuff. And for the first time, or maybe the second time, Patton gets to draw the original Justice Leaguers. Now we've got a sort of a prelude here. For some reason, Conway's loving these preludes in the Justice League Detroit. I can kind of take it or leave it.
Hmm.
Usually, it doesn't make that much sense. But anyway, in the main part of the story, we've got the old leaguers who are upset that the new leaguers are kind of doing their thing. And so we get
Actually,
into,
I was
sorry,
just gonna say, I actually really liked the Anansi prologue. I thought that there were more of those, but we haven't come across them, so maybe there are some later.
not that,
Um,
yeah, that not the Ananasi ones in particular, but that just the prologues in general are always
oh,
always
okay.
Justice League
Because
Detroit.
I distinctly remembered it from childhood, the spider but I do agree. I don't know that it was necessarily that relevant to the story, but kind of cool and something that I remembered from being a kid. I actually really love this. First of all, getting to see Patton draw the characters, the Maestro arc that we didn't cover, with the old league kind of returns and face off with the Russians. Really love that issue, or those issues. But what I love the most about this scene, the tension between the old league and the new league, having their discussion and how great these characters look together. And I just feel like, honestly, it's sort of so sad that I feel like it was a missed opportunity for them not to maintain the old league and just add these new characters and then see the interplay between these famous characters that we want to see, with all due respect to Elongated Man and Zatanna, and how they interact with Steel and Vibe and these new characters that really have a lot of life. They're current, they're interesting, their visuals are outstanding. And seeing them standing next to Flash, for example, who I don't see why he's super fast. Like, why couldn't he just stay in the team? He's got time to do it all. Seeing Wonder Woman there, I just really love that. And like I said, I love the tension of them discussing, how the new league has come about.
So speaking of tension as to why the new league has come about, I think Aquaman basically resigned and restarted in front of the UN and every television camera on planet Earth, the new Justice League, and they do some horse trading and they get into the fact that there's all these Justice League bylaws and so on and so forth. And as an OG member in paragraph 7C of our constitution, I have the right to do this and that. So that gets smoothed over. And I love, just as the sort of new characters are entering, the old characters are going out the door. That is a hell of a good scene, Patrick. So anyway, Aquaman and John Johns are blessed by Superman and Wonder Woman and Flash to kind of like continue the legacy, I guess. So this is kind of a brand new start for Justice League Detroit, as there's been some investigations by the government. They're not necessarily the most welcomed of teams. So having the imprimatur of authority given to them by no less than the big S himself is is definitely kind of holding them in good stead, you'd hope. Now, in a now for something completely different. I remember in the annual, for whatever reason, Zatanna is giving Dale Gunn some cookies and some milk while wearing her finest seductive lingerie. Also just skulking around now in the Justice League headquarters, peering in on an intimate moment with Vixen and Dale Gunn. And then in the next page, Dale Gunn is just like thinking all of this over and mulling this stuff over, and Vixen is off into the action. Um, Everything is happening in these 2 pages, Patrick. We're setting up some Days of Our Lives soap operas. We've got an interpersonal and inter-teammate rivalry
Mm.
established. And we've got the impetus for the plot of this issue, which is Vixen going out and really putting it to settle up whatever she needs to settle up.
Yeah, I actually like Zatanna getting a little bit of a deeper characterization instead of sort of being the goody goody sorceress. And we don't really, this was the problem with the Justice League before, is they didn't have enough differentiating characteristics among them. And so she's a little jealous, she doesn't like Vixen. And like you said, having some interpersonal dynamics in the team that aren't all positive is a great thing. Steel versus Aquaman. Now we've got Zatanna versus Vixen. Some little new versus old interplay and friction is always a good thing. It
And
is a
that's
little
what
bit odd that a middle-aged balding man is pulling so much action.
he's got, a sweet turtleneck. So
And a graying beard, but it works. It's working for him. The ladies love it. Probably hasn't seen this much attention in a long time, and I think it probably speaks to a lack of eligible bachelors, maybe in the bunker more than anything else.
yeah.
So
But who's getting
it'll,
rid
it,
of all this rubbish outside their headquarters? They need to do a spring clean.
yeah.
Um, this is superb, just superb. Um, so you can see in the background of the first panel the sort of shadowing of Vixen. It just looks really cool to my eye. This is talk about kinetic and dynamic and stuff. Chuck Patton is really bringing it here. The new characters are starting to make sense, as far as the whole point of the new characters was to bring their communities and their families and their friends into this milieu of the Justice League, in order to maybe start up some adventures that weren't necessarily like cosmical stuff all of the time. And I think that is really succeeding. Whether it succeeded so much in some previous issues, maybe not so much. I know that we're still on the back burner with Steel and his granddad basically turning him into the non-consensual cyborg. So that's a pretty like striking departure from the usual subject matter of the Justice League of America. But these sections with Vixen in her, basically it's essentially a special about Vixen again is really working well. And this is where we get character versus character intra relations within the team. So it seems like Vixen is just ready to fly off the handle. And the only way that Aquaman can really stop that is by kind of using his sort of telepathy powers. He tries to reason, but only briefly, and then appeals to authority, and then he's just like, no, we're not having that. And then I think quite rightly, John Johns is on the side of the angels here, Patrick. Like,
I,
if you want to be a
yeah,
leader, you can't like if you want to be a leader who's not a supervillain, you can't just mind manipulate people into doing what you want, right?
I mean, theoretically, I agree with you. But having said that, I actually love Aquaman using his telepathy like this. I thought his power-ups were great. I think he's showing more speed and strength on the surface, and then being able to use his telepathy sort of as a mind blast and on humans. I kind of really love that.
I'm not against the power.
Theoretically, not morally, I agree with you there. And again, like you said, we're having the Aquaman Vixen interplay here, and then John Jones stepping in and sort of pulling him up by the nape, but in this case the chest. That's great too. Like, the more dynamics that we can have in the team, the better. But yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. But just as an Aquaman fan, I did think it was great that they did that. I think that's since been sort of erased. I don't know that he does that these days.
So yeah, he's spoken like a true Aqua fan. Maybe he needs some stern talking to from Nicole Kidman to really sort himself out and get him back on the straight and narrow. So as has been, so we've got these pot boiling sort of things going on in Justice League Detroit. There's basically an African nation which is escaping me right now that Vixen's heritage is from, and her uncle has basically become the dictator after overtaking the nation. Now she has a special totem which he believes is his right as the leader of this nation, and so that's basically in the last 12 or so issues in causing this undercurrent of the narrative drive of Vixen's sort of story arc here. And she's decided that she's going to just call it out and bring it to an end. This totem actually seems to be a lot more powerful in the hands of this guy than it does necessarily to Vixen, right, Patrick? So in the hands of the ox, he actually is turning into an ox. And so talk about sort of kinetic energy and dynamism. We get that in the bottom left hand corner here. We're
And
seeing,
the
yeah.
silhouette is great.
Oh yeah, it's not easy to do that, and that is just some great art. There's some great art in this, Patrick. The story is kind of like giving us a lot of threads, but the art is the really solid part. And I must say, in all of these Justice League Detroits, no matter how much we might be disappointed in the stories so far, like the art is always part excellence, as illustrated again on this couple of pages here. Like, just look at we're using that thing as the theater. We're setting our play or our comic in the theater, and we have this theater sort of boards there, and then this action is going side to side along the theater, and then all of a sudden this guy's got horns. It's Vixen versus the horny man. Um, just yeah, that's going to be the tagline for the episode. And just look at this lavish sort of saliva just going down his
Yeah.
jaw there, like just so you
He's a
can't.
he's a great looking villain. I mean, I'm even vibing on the hairy shoulders. But now one thing I don't love about the art, probably the only thing, And I hope it's not racially insensitive, but does is it me or does he have a really weird hairdo even before he turns into an ox?
Oh yeah, he's got the Green Goblin, the Norman Osborn sort of.
Are those curls or does he have like some kind of cornrow? I
Uh
was very confused.
yeah, I'm sort of tempted to think that it's a tight curl, and so
Yeah,
he's
maybe.
doing
Okay.
it's like it's Patton's version of, or Patton and Machlan's version of the Norman Osborn do. And with the massive widow's peak as well, it kind of like really makes me feel like Norman Osborn vibes.
But yeah, I was almost ashamed that the Gourd Ox kind of, disappears from the pages because he's so cool looking. And you're exactly right. The art makes these stories. Yeah, Chuck Patton is a treasure. So I don't know what he's doing now, but
Yeah, just pretty cool stuff. And once like, oh, why did it go backwards? We're in a giga loop of forward and back. Um, just
the
the
final
way
face
that,
down with the horny man.
yeah, it just great angles there. And I'm a big fan of leg day, and it looks like Ox is doing his leg day to great effect, as well as his back and his arms. But I mean, his leg day is good. He's got his patented 1988 rat tail mullet Norman Osborn thing going on. Just everyone's going nuts. But if you look at this right hand full page thing, look at all of the things that is, so this is show don't tell. We're going to look at all of these sharp objects that this guy is about to like tumble on Patrick. It's kind of ominous. This fight scene goes for a few pages and I'm not getting tired of it. I mean, it's crazy to think that I'm such a big comic fan, but not necessarily a comic fan of the fight scenes. This one is one of the things that harkens back to why we even read this as kids in the first place, because we get these awesome, almost balletic sort of set piece. And
I
just
see.
look at that
Yeah,
swinging from the top and then grabbing him around the neck and then taking the thing off so that then he's not the ox man when he lands. Like that's, and we didn't get any description of that, Patrick. Like
oh yeah.
there's no captioning. It's just really cool art that sells us on what the hell is happening. We don't need to read captions about it.
I think for me, I'm the same. I don't necessarily have to have, a huge fight scene. And it was a longer fight scene. I also did not get tired of it. I think that speaks to the art. One thing that I've noticed for me personally is if there are, and I think I've said this particularly about Justice League, if there are interesting powers being used in interesting ways, those are sort of the fight scenes that I like the most. These sort of rock'em sock'em robot punches and flips, I'm not always as into. But this is rendered so well, and Vixen sort of gives that dynamicism. The Gord Ox looks so cool that I thought it was excellent. And there's no blasting, there's no
Yeah.
magics, there's no nothing. It's just a physical fight, and yeah, it definitely does the work. I also want to mention that I don't know if I told you this, but I've been rewatching the Final Destination movies in
Okay.
anticipation of the new one coming out. And so this last panel is definitely giving Final Destination vibes years before the first movie was released. So not that Chuck Patton or Final Destination invented the falling on the sharp object, of course, but this is very Final Destination coded.
And just loving like even the end, the denouement, like we're ending on the scene with this guy impaled on this stuff. And then that's it. We're just cutting to the next episode. That's how to do a Justice League special on Vixen, Patrick. And we have a modicum of conversation with the shop owner, and then we're out the door. There's no pissing around.
She
Yeah,
sheds a tear for her uncle and moves on with her life.
yeah.
Now, do you, as is your penchant to do, I assume that you read the letters to the editor
Oh,
in this one?
yeah. There was a whole full page letter in this issue, Patrick, and the campers aren't happy.
Yeah, the letters are pretty brutal, going through a lot of these issues, and that's to be expected. However, having said that, I feel like the responses from the editor may be overly defensive and confrontational. They seem very almost a bit juvenile. Like So these are your customers for one thing.
Yeah.
So you don't want to respect them for that, but you also don't want to like sort of put yourself in the mud and be in a sort of R2 R not kind of a thing. And it was sort of reading like that for me. And I think going forward too, that trend kind of continues. I did notice in reading
So
ahead,
it's
where
it's
there's
one thing to do that if you are reading a Next Men comic, John Byrne is answering the letters. If you're reading a Savage Dragon comic, Eric Larson is answering the letters. Like you can choose as DC to print whatever letter that you want. Like you don't, no one is forcing you to print this diptych thing and then have this extended response and it's very negative and it just I don't know what the point of that was.
I think it's a credit to them to print negative and positive letters. But yeah, the response is so defensive and sort of
Oh,
trying to
that's what I
either,
meant with the
I don't want to
negative
say
letters. If it's your
gaslight, but
comic book, yeah, if it's your comic book and John Byrne is responding in the Next Man to something that you were found confusing or didn't like, that's like then he gets to explain what the hell's going on. In this, it seems we're not going to explain what's going on. It's not our job to explain what's going on. And even if you think something needs to be explained, I'm not going to do it.
well, that and you know you're wrong, or this is what well most people said that they loved it. Like, okay, like,
yeah,
well then why are
just
you putting negative letters?
yeah,
I don't know. So there's a little bit of that in the Legion 5 years later that we've also been
yeah.
reading where the letters can kind of some of them are and like I said to their credit they print some negative ones but also in there, they don't come off quite as defensive and sort of confrontational as these do. But there's also a little bit of that sort of, well, yeah, well, a lot of people liked it. Well,
Or,
okay,
but
like that's
also the
great.
creators are allowed to respond with the specific points too. So I think that's what separates the Legion letters, which are also curated by an editor. But there is some avenue for responses from the beer bounds, I think. Whereas here, it would have just been nice if Patton or Conway could have just gone, well, like if you want to have, Flash in the Justice League, there's 228 other issues of that, so be our guest. But, if you bear with us, you might enjoy these characters more. It does help if you had have actually had the Flash now that you mention it. Maybe some of that negativity, it was too much too soon.
Mm.
You've burnt the watchtower, they've gone off the moon, there's no Batman and no Superman and no Wonder Woman. Can't we at least have the Flash?
Yeah.
Uh,
Or Green Arrow and Black Canary, they were too busy.
so
Why did
yeah,
we have to
I
get rid
think
of
they
Red
were.
Tornado?
Yeah, I think they were upset, and/or I think Green Arrow was about to go big in a big way with Longbow Hunters, which is something that
Hmm.
maybe we should be on the channel looking at down the line. Mike Grell, famous Legion artist, to come
Green
fantasy.
Arrow is the tough one for me. You know how I feel about heroes that don't have powers.
Well, maybe we'll just have to get into the Warlord with a hero that has no powers and a grey-haired mullet, just to really get all of
With or without the rat tail.
yeah, yeah. So that's a callback for long time Tarnished Bronze viewers about all of the different haircuts that are possible in comic books. You could draw whatever you want, and people are choosing to draw these very bizarre haircuts. So loved the showdown here. Loved some of the setup, some nostalgia. I love some of the symbology. I like the John Johns Aquaman thing is going to be boiling along pretty soon. We've got some Desperate Housewives, Brave and the Bold stuff going on with Dale Gunn, who has the Riz, I believe the kids call it these days. Patrick, this is probably the best Justice League issue since the annual.
Yes, for sure. Um, I know you don't necessarily love Mantlow's Fantastic Four 218, but I kind of think that I might like it better than this one.
Well, I believe, I'll show you the record keeping of this. I have braces around 218 with 239. So I don't think it's as good as Invasion, just because Invasion has so much stuff and so much energy and so much
Yes.
value. 218 is something that should be better than what it was, but it was a bit of a misfire. The art isn't up to the John Byrne sort of
But it's
premiere.
still good. I
It's
mean,
still good.
with all due respect to Chuck Patton, I feel like the art in Fantastic Four 218, like a slightly subpar John Byrne is still maybe Chuck
Yeah, so
Patton.
so that's what I mean. As much as I love that fight scene, I think it sits either just above or just below 218, but definitely above all the other Justice League Detroit. So I'm happy to put it between Justice League Detroit 235 and Fantastic Four 218.
I would vote for that, mainly because we have an ensemble cast. I feel like that always gets bonus points for me. We've got a group of super villains as opposed to the Gordocs, and we have a good fight scene in several good fight scenes in 218 too that are
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
The
yeah.
the oversized vacuum cleaner, the freezing Sue Storm into an ionic. I don't even know what they called it.
Yeah, I think my lack of enthusiasm for 218 is just purely based on the highs and the ceiling that these creators have, rather than necessarily the thing that was in front of me. So obviously, no one is keeping score about besides us about what is on our top 50 comic books. So you had it from here. Justice League 239 is actually a pretty worthwhile issue. If
Yeah.
you only just read all of the Vixen specials, and there's a fair few of them along the way for the Justice League Detroit, you are not missing out on all of the filler, and you are definitely getting some of the killer. So like, follow, subscribe. We'll maybe get into some Justice League Detroit down the line, but we definitely have all of those Bronze Age and Bronze Age adjacent things that you know and love. So, Patrick, it's been a pleasure, and we will see you again soon.